You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabalcast. And this week we've got our look ahead. Obviously, we just finished our year end, wrapped up the year. We're starting fresh with our new formatting for releases, as well as our standard look ahead episode. And before we recorded, we sat down, we went over what our points were. Two of our points very much align, and the third splits off. So we're basically just presenting 4-ish points rather than the usual 6 that we do. So with that, let's take it away.
Yep. So the first one that came to mind is that we're finally seeing the return of Grand Prix style play via the Spotlight series. And basically these are just large constructed, well, not, I shouldn't say constructed because Denver is limited, but they're just large play events with a clear path to the Pro Tour, which is what we had in Grand Prix. So it's an event by any other name, right? And much like the RC and RCQ season last year, we're basically seeing a very limited number of these in kind of an underserving pattern where there will be 8 total Spotlight series across the globe in 2025. There are going to be 5 in the United States. There will be 2 events in Europe, and there's going to be 1 event in Japan. So other regions are going to be underserved while WotC kind of tests the water for this. But what we've seen is that thus far, tournament series like this succeed. And so in 2026, we will see an expanded series of events. On top of this, we will be getting coverage for all of these events, which is amazing. That brings eyes, that lends power to these events. It makes them more accessible and more utilitarian for people across the globe that are looking to engage with the constructed formats that the Spotlight series will have. And there's a lot of, I want to say, hard breakpoints at these events that we didn't have previously, and it took a very long time for Grand Prix to kind of iterate on. And for those that didn't get to experience the Grand Prix series of events, what eventually happened was these events grew so large that you could X1 these events, not make top 8, and then not get invited to the Pro Tour. And so they eventually started extending the invites down and down and down as these events grew larger and larger and larger. Yeah. So they kind of set these breakpoints. And the first one is that you day 2 automatically if you have 18 points or more in 9 rounds of play on day 1. And then there are 6 rounds of play on day 2. And for Atlanta, I heard that the cash prize support went down to either 32nd or 64th place. I think it was 64th. And the top 128 got a foil copy of the Terror of the Peaks promo that was given out at the event. I was led to believe that it would be the Terror of the Peaks promo that would be given out at all Spotlight series, meaning that we would have 128 times 5, which is 640 copies of that card's total in existence. But some other people said that the language used in the announcement, which we will link, leads them to believe that we will be getting different promos at different events, which makes even the non-foil versions of the Terror Peaks a little more unique than just the number of entrants in each event summed across the year. And so basically at every facet, aside from the fact that there were only 8 throughout the entire year, is fantastic. People are getting to experience competitive Magic at events for the first time in a very long time. And this is something that I think Magic badly needs right now. Heading into COVID, the idea of Magic Fests, I think Magic Fests replacing Grand Prix was fantastic. You rename the events, that's cool. WotC runs them. You get that kind of convention atmosphere that we talked about in episodes past with panels, etc. But now instead, just letting tournament organizers put these events together themselves, host a large main event with as many side events as they want of varied games, bringing in vendors and artists and everything else that they want kind of brings us back to what used to be the Grand Prix circuit and puts a lot of focus on competitive play at these events compared to a convention atmosphere, and gives us all the idea of like, hey, these are the events that we need to pay attention to. This is what we should be going to play if we want to actually move through the ranks, so to speak, and gives everybody the idea of like, this is what matters in the game. This is what is going to propel the game forward when you take a step back and set aside Commander as a format.
Yeah, I think the thing for me, and this was, I also clearly had this point, was I'm actually excited for the potential of what this means, because this is, you're right, it's a hybrid of Grand Prix and Mythic Fests, because you still have the like Mythic Fest con stuff going on, like with, cosplay, vendors, whatever else. But the fact that they're now backing it up with something that gives people an incentive to do this and have an actual prize pool and a meaningful way to qualify for the Pro Tour, which is more in line with Grand Prix and less with Mythic Fests, which seemingly did nothing. I don't actually know what the point of them was other than to win money. I don't know if they actually got you an invite to the Pro Tour or, the paid league when that was around or whatever.
I think they were just literally renamed Grand Prix, so it was the top 8 or the top 16 that got invites at the end of the day.
Yeah. That makes sense. But this seems to be, I think the announcement when they announced Magic Fests was, we want this to be a local event that people from the local area will travel to and make it a celebration of their joy of Magic. And that's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited because OP seems like it's gotten kind of away from that and moved more towards the, like, back on the PTQ grind when, there was all this really cool stuff going on at these things, which may or may not have been related to the actual event. But the event was insane. The vendors were great. Everyone had an awesome time there. And I think that's the thing that I'm excited to have more of that. And the fact that if they are shifting back towards an emphasis on competitive, and especially, which we'll get into in our next point, standard, this to me feels more like 2015, 2016 Magic in terms of events.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, you and I were both on the circuit then. It was like 3 weekends a month, judging, vending, playing, whatever, at some large event. And that was, to me, the most fun I had interacting with the game was when we had competitive play like that.
Yes.
Because the game was healthier. They cared about the LGS. The LGS had a way to get there. The big events had a way to get there. Like, it was just a really good time in Magic, and I'm excited because having this back means things are starting to go back to normal, back to a post-pandemic quarantine, whatever, where we can have large paper events and kind of ignore Arena for a little while. Hopefully we won't, but this is a good sign for me, and I'm very excited and very much looking forward to how these events are handled this year, especially because I would love to see something happen with LATAM in the future. And if they say, hey, look, we fucked up, next year we're coming to LATAM, we realized our mistake, or Southeast Asia, Australia, anything like that. But I am excited for that very much, and I will say it's not 100% the right thing. It's not the way I would do it, but I will give credit. What they are doing with organized play is a step in the right direction, and I hope Huey continues to be able to lobby for whatever he wants it to look like.
Yeah.
Because this was good.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience in Atlanta, there were people that flew in from Canada to play at the Spotlight Series Atlanta. And so you're going to see that kind of travel for people that either just want the experience, want to take a vacation, or just want to try and get on, that grind. And right now, coming out of Atlanta, I think in the wee hours of the Sunday event, Star City tweeted the next 2 North American events. They will be sealed in Denver in, I think, April. Okay. And constructed in Indianapolis, I think in June.
Which is always a great city for that to happen.
Correct. And so so what we're going to see, I believe, is Star City start to move west. And so the two events after those, the last two in the United States, will be on the West Coast in the latter part of the year. And so we'll see this kind of, westward movement, see how people come out, see what the returns on these events look like, and then we'll see the increase in events overall. Like you said, and I mentioned in my thing, I think we are underserving a portion of the world in general. My round 3 opponent in Atlanta came from Toronto, and so we were bantering about the RC series versus the face-to-face series, and how I thought it was kind of a bad look for WotC to not let face-to-face host a Spotlight series in 2025 in Canada, considering the fact that they have like the largest or the best tournament series in Canada that I know of. But at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this later, the OP system has expanded, and this is just the next step that WotC's towing into. So cool. The next thing I'm excited for in 2025, the next thing I'm looking forward to, is this kind of clear vision of what WotC is trying to do with Magic and engaging both new and old players alike. So with the 2025 set roadmap in front of us, we see that all expansions and supplemental sets are releasing into standard instead of modern or older formats, which highlights standard as the true on-ramp to competitive Magic or Magic in general, which we've been missing for a very long time. For a while, that had been Commander. And when you re-up in Standard as your kind of premier format, that engages players in a way that we have been missing probably since the late 2010s. You get more people engaged with the game, with the product, and with the competitive scene this way than you generally do with Commander, because Commander players are Commander. They might be your whales in regards to packs, but your competitive scene rots when that is your focus. So if you want to maintain this professional tour, when you want to maintain a marketing strategy that still seems to center around play the game, see the world, you need to focus on your competitive landscape. And when you push, is it the 5 or 6 sets that are coming out next year directly into Standard, you do just that. You are saying that this is the format that we care about the most. This is the format that we are going to support the most. And this is the format that you as players should start looking at and caring about the most compared to others. It is a little weird that Modern is a Spotlight series and RCQ season in the coming year, and everything pushes to Standard. But at the end of the day, that's still fine, because Standard sets can impact Modern. It doesn't happen all the time, but you do get cards here and there that impact Modern. Not every card needs to be. I was thinking, you have those. Those are bangers. I was also thinking about workhorses like Fatal Push.
Yeah.
Right? You just have some, like, honest to goodness Magic cards just putting in a day's work in Modern sometimes, because they're just costed aggressively. They're not oppressive. They just help maintain the health of the format. Yep. And I'm excited for that in general. Nothing to do with the IPs that are going to be attached to these sets. The rumor that the last set this year will be Avatar: The Last Airbender. Nothing about that. It's everything to do with the fact that all of these sets funnel directly through Standard, then into Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, etc. The other important formats for constructed and competitive play. That is the next thing I'm excited for 2025.
Yeah, and me, it's very much the same. Standard, because it'll happen in the LGS again. I grew up in LGSs playing Standard. The best time I had working, owning, operating in LGS was when Standard has been good. I've harped on Wizards needs to care about the LGS more, because they clearly don't. And literally the biggest thing you can do is make Standard matter. Because if I can sell sealed packs in my store, I can make money. That's great.
Yep.
As long as Wizards doesn't also undercharge what I can charge on Amazon. But that's besides the point. I think it's awesome to have people come into the store and to be able to say, hey, here's 2 on-ramps for you. Are you a competitive player, or do you just want to hang out with your friends? Because both of those people come in asking about Magic. And before, I literally just had to tell them, well, Modern's what fires here, so play that. And now I can say, no, this is actually a season for the next couple months.
Mm-hmm.
This is where all the money is. This is a good way to get associated with the game and see how it works in a smaller environment. And being able to have that, to be able to on-ramp people with that, to a competitive player, to a casual even as well, that, hey, we give out store credit on Fridays for Standard because that's what people want now. It's just all around good for the LGS. It's also nice because this is a way for us to put value into packs which have effectively become worthless.
Yeah.
We can't sell Standard packs. We can sell collector boosters for a little bit. But after that, it's like, what Masters, Horizons, whatever series do you have? That's what I want. What remastered series?
This is going to be anecdotal, but straight up, the people that I play Legacy with also play Standard and Modern now because they're competitive, but the only way they engage with Standard is to baseball. And that is basically just degen gambling on packs.
Yeah, that's for the last 4 years how I've engaged with Standard too, is just playing baseball with other vendors at events.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, you flip a card, that's the mana value, and the next person has to beat that mana value, but until they flip cards until they beat the mana value, and like you go,
and then you go,
yeah. So
and the winner keeps both packs.
Exactly. At the end of the day, so if you flip a 3-drop, I've got a 3 mana value card. I've got to flip 4 or more, and then you've got to beat the difference, and then it goes back and forth, and that's just
like baseball.
Exactly. That's the way people engaged. My locals engaged with Standard for a while, and even some supplementary sets.
Yeah,
was just to degen it, and
that's okay. Don't get me wrong. I love degenning with my regulars, but I like being able to sell product too.
Absolutely. So once you put an emphasis on this through competitive play and various other odds and ends, it makes these packs a little more impactful.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
they matter significantly more.
Yeah. Like now that we can play Standard, people actually care about the promo packs that come with every event that my LGS fires.
Yep.
We burned through like years worth of promo packs that were just sitting in backstock from just, COVID era. And now you have to go 3-0. So it incentivizes actually playing out the final round, even if you chop, right? Even if you just split, somebody has to win. You get the promos and the packs. And I can hold up my Pringle. Oh God, these look terrible. Like go for the throat and disdainful strokes from Standard. Just like, it does look like 2 Pringles when I put them together. I can just squeeze them a little bit.
Love it, but not really. That sucks.
No, that part is terrible. The fact that these are actually like damage cards is terrible. That's on WotC, not my LGS. But this is
exactly
like these cards matter in Standard now. So if I didn't have them, then I could use them. And the fact that they matter and they're the like the Cowboy Bebop arts.
Yeah.
Is impactful because people are looking for them for the IP and use and utility. Everything you're saying and espousing here just lends itself to the fact that like the LGS is now empowered.
Yeah,
when it comes
it's
to
a great feeling to have because we haven't in ages. So
yeah, just no fetch lands into Jace Vryn's Prodigy, please. We don't need $500 Standard decks anymore.
No, I don't ever want to get to that again. No.
All right, next point.
Yes.
All right. So my last point is a little on the nose here and pretty short in summation. And it's an OP system that actually syncs to quarters in the year with expanded TOs per region, offering an amount of events to previously underserved areas like ADAM and APAC. That's what I'm looking forward to. And for those that haven't seen it yet, I'll bring up the announcement because I think people just kind of read through this, but it's incredibly important. So in 2025 and 26, round 1 of RCQs starts around quarter 2 with Modern, Constructed, and Limited in 2025. In Q3, we get Standard again, Standard and Limited, and then in Q4, we get Standard and Constructed. Previously, these were just like yeehaw dates. Nobody had any idea what was going on. You had to be very in tune with the WotC calendar as an LGS, and as a player, it was also just freaking miserable. You got to see who's hosting what to actually know what season you are in. Now, after this kind of like vestigial bit, this season 1, everything else syncs seasons 2, 3, and 4 to parts of the calendar year, and I think that's fantastic logistically for players.
Yeah.
On top of that, in the next section, qualify for the Pro Tour today. We see that RCQs are being held in the US by Star City, in Canada, Face to Face, in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Fanfinity, in Australia and New Zealand, Good Games, China, Kadao, in Japan and Korea, Big Magic, Southeast Asia, Oracle Games, Chinese Taipei, Game Square, in Brazil, City Class Games, in Mexico and Central America, the Caribbean, Necro Tower, in South America, Magic Sir. That is effectively every region of the world. Every region of the world will have RCQs right now, and that's exactly what people were looking for in 2023, 2024 when this announcement was made. And WotC was like, hold on, we got to test the system. So when I talked earlier about the expansion of the Spotlight series to the rest of the globe and WotC just doing their test, this is what I hope the results of the Spotlight series turn into, which is just a pure expansion across the globe, opening this up to all the TOs that I just mentioned and having a Spotlight series somewhere on the planet, like not every week because that was literally insane, but like maybe twice a month in different regions of the globe so people don't have to keep traveling. Right now it's every 2.4 months we have a Spotlight series. That's the way the math works out. But when you break down all these TOs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, we could basically have one a month across the globe. If you want to be aggressive, you could put 2 in every region, and you would still serve everybody well. Or you could just open up the Grand Prix style and just keep Europe and Europe, the US and the US, and just like jam it, just gas the system, whatever you want, however many people you want at the Pro Tour, just open the floodgates. And I'm excited for that because it means that there's more of an opportunity for people to, again, play Magic at a competitive level, make sense of the professional tour, give opportunity to people in this game that didn't have it before, and maybe even actually see a lot more people from underserved areas of the game make it to Worlds, perform well at the Pro Tour, etc., instead of it just being a bunch of people from like North America and a handful from Europe like it usually is.
Right. Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's something that I wanted to see done as part of the actual, not Grand Prix, but Grand Prix circuit. Mm-hmm. But that does speak well for the future. My third one, speaking of organized play and events, is actually that my personal event schedule for the first time ever does not include any Magic-only events. I'm doing like general collectibles. I am doing Fanatics Fest in New York, which is going to be sports specific for the most part. There will be some like Disney and stuff like that there, but not much. But I'm doing a lot of the Collecticons, like Galaxy Cons, Gen Con, stuff like that, where, okay, it's showcasing gaming as a whole. And the reason I'm excited for that is because of the potential to get new people involved or have a positive experience with Magic.
Yep. When
the game is good. Especially Collecticons, the vast majority of people there, they're there to buy for the most part. They're not there to play. There's some events at some of them, but not too many. But there have been a number of them that have asked, as they see Magic in the case, as they see Pokemon in the case, they ask about it. They get interested. They buy some stuff. And that's something that I'm just really excited to see on that stage, now that I've seen it a little bit more personally at the LGS recently. Okay. Because obviously winter, we get people in for gifts, stuff like that. We've been trying to tell people, hey, standard is good again. Hey, EDH is great as always, and draft is actually kind of fun now. And to be able to spread that kind of enjoyment of the hobby at large, I'll be frank, is not something I've gotten to do very often recently. And I'm very excited for that, to kind of get back into the community aspect of it and see the greater community at large and try to bring some of it back to wherever I can.
Yeah, basically converting players of other games into Magic or vice versa by being able to extend the product in the catalog. It makes sense. And with the opportunity to do so because the Spotlight series is so spread out, I feel like that works in your favor as well. If you had to do a Spotlight series every other month, or you had to be aware of a Spotlight series every other month, then that would cut down severely on not just the number, but the types of conventions that you could probably focus on as well.
Yeah.
Like when I was moving more heavily for vendors, we basically kind of stuck to, I don't want to say like old reliables, but if we weren't at a Magic event selling Magic, that we wanted to be at a place where we can sell Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
Like those are the literally those were the two events we were looking for. And sometimes we would just be at Pokemon Nats or Yu-Gi-Oh YCS, because guess what? When you're in that room, that's what you sell. Like, it's obvious. But that also, you're doing all those Grand Prix, that shrinks what you can do, and that shrinks your ability to expose your business, your name, etc., to other people. So I get that, and it makes sense. And I assume from a business standpoint too, it's got to be pretty nice to be able to feel good about having that many like verticals that you feel are successful. You're not just reliant on Magic or Pokemon, etc.
Definitely. And especially the, like, you hear people who say, hey, this is stuff I can't sell at my store, but I can sell it at these events, and I'll buy your stuff that you can't move and I can sell at my store. That's nice as well, to be able to do that and to be able to kind of learn. There's Yu-Gi-Oh vendors that do things differently than Magic vendors. Magic vendors that do things differently than Pokemon vendors. Pokemon that do things differently than models or whatever else, we may or may not sell in the store. And it's just really excited to see that and have like, man, this feels like events are happening again.
Yeah.
Like this is what we were looking for this whole time.
Yeah.
And now it's getting back to, man, this feels like it used to. Okay, this is great.
Yeah. And for people that are curious about like why this idea is good, I think a pretty solid example is when you look at Standard right now, and we say Standard is good and there's a lot of great opportunity, and you think about, okay, how do we cross-brand into other events? What can we do? Or what are we looking for? You take a look at the land base, for instance, and you see that the Scars of Mirrodin fast lands are in Standard. Well, this is actually their third, in some cases, fourth printings. One of them was in Bloombarrow Commander, but the other one was in Zendikar Expeditions. Those are high-end cards. So when you're looking at Collecticon, GalaxyCon, etc., those are cards that can walk into that room and somebody say, okay, I want to get out of Magic and swing into this other game. But because Standard is good and almost every single one of those fast lands is actually played in Standard, you can feel good as a Magic vendor buying those or trading them, having somebody trade them to you to move into another game. And so you can go to these other events and not arbitrage, that's the wrong word, but effectively acquire realistic and actionable inventory from these events to move into Magic and vice versa. And so that's one of the reasons why being able to extend yourself into other types of events is really important as a vendor, especially when Standard is good. Sometimes it's modern, and like the same thing would go for the Fetchland Expeditions, right?
Yeah.
Or not the Yu-Gi-Oh cards in Kaladesh, the masterpieces, the inventions, right?
Yep.
Same thing goes for those. A lot of them are playable in Commander, so they kind of move down into Modern, etc. And so you can pick a lot of those high-end things up from these conventions. So where you can extend yourself out, that's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. And it's also nice. I think the really interesting thing that a lot of stores may struggle with, especially, myself having come primarily from Magic-centered events before, is, some stores can't maintain a show stock and a store inventory. But when you're spread across multiple verticals for the same space, suddenly it becomes a lot easier to not necessarily gut your store stock just because you're gone for a weekend at an event. And I think that's also something that's very nice about the events as well.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else before I move into picks?
No, let's do it.
All right, so I told you up top you're going first.
Yes. So my pick, this is one that I was like, well, do I want to pick it right now? It's probably fine. And that is 2 blue and 2 for Enduring Curiosity. It is a 4/3 cat glimmer with flash, and it reads Curiosity. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And this is where it gets good, when it dies, if it was a creature, return to the battlefield under its owner's control as an enchantment. So it's still Curiosity. Now, Standard is a little unsettled, and this card is everywhere right now. But that's not why I'm picking it. while I think that those decks are good and they could prove to be very, very good as things go on, I'm picking it because of the EDH implications for this card. This is just Edric all over again. Only in anything running blue and just for you. So I guess it's really just curiosity. Never mind. But this is something that can see really good casual appeal because you're drawing more cards for pinging people, swinging at people, whatever the case is. And that's just good. It also has a lot of play clearly in Standard. I think this may, in a world where Modern slows down about 2 turns, potentially have a home there, or Legacy if it ever gets fixed, but probably not. I think this is one that, literally looking at the prices on stocks, we've hit a plateau, and we've been stable for a while. Duskmorn is not a set that's necessarily sitting around waiting for people to open. Distro does still have a supply of it, but it's not huge. And this is a card that I think kind of flew under the radar for a little bit until, like, recently, really, right? I don't remember it popping up in Standard past the last couple months. Do you?
So it was not the one that was hyped. I think Enduring Vitality, the green one, was the one that was hyped prior to Foundations because it was in the Otter combo deck. And that took like 45 minutes to combo out. And eventually that deck got another couple pieces in Foundation, but was not did not end up being good in Standard.
Okay.
And going into and coming out of Atlanta, Enduring Curiosity has actually hit in Standard in a number of places. So we'll bring this up real quick. This is what Standard looks like right now. When you look for Enduring Curiosity, we see Dimir midrange, which is actually kind of a misnomer. There are a lot of decks that fall into this category. Azorius Flash, I think, is the Abhorrent Oculus deck. Azorius Glyph is called Blink Chantress. That's alongside Azorius Aura. So those two are kind of tied together. And after that, it's just kind of a mishmash of things that don't matter. But this is a card that has picked up very much in Standard recently. And there's a deck as well. I don't know if it's Dimir or Esper Pixies. I'd have to take a look. That was a known quantity going into Atlanta, performed really well, and a lot of people are interested in. And I think Curiosity might fall into that as well.
Yeah.
But as the format, like you said, kind of figures itself out, we understand where the mid-range and the control decks are. Enduring Curiosity has the opportunity to be there for sure because base Dimir is a very powerful color combination to deal with the base red decks. And then when you look at this from a commander standpoint, the immediate comparison is actually Coastal Piracy. That's an enchantment from Masks.
That's the...
Yep. 2 and 2 blue. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. That is exactly the text on Enduring Curiosity, except it's just not a 4/3 or whatever this is. It doesn't have flash, and it doesn't return to the battlefield as an enchantment. So Enduring Curiosity just absolutely
strict upgrade
mushes Coastal Piracy in regards to popularity. And then when you take a look at Rec as well, this is in 4% of about 687,000 decks that could possibly play this, which I assume just means they're like base blue with a smidge of enchantment to it. So this is already, like you said, seeing play in Commander. This is going to be a popular card overall, and it will be in Standard for 5 years, right? That's how rotation works now. So it's hard to imagine that this card actually loses meta share overall. Like enough to drop the price point from 8 to below 5. So I think this is a fine look now and into the future.
And that's one of the things too, is like this point I feel like is just our floor for price.
Yeah.
And it's at like peak visibility right now. So if you want to get it, now's probably the time, because this to me is one of those slow gainers that just like you look up and you need one for a deck and you're like, fuck man, when did Enduring Curiosity become $20? Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of potential I see happening for this.
Yeah.
Now we'll see what print runs end up being. If Duskmorn ever gets revisited while it's in Standard, who knows? They're not clear on what all that means with us at the local store level. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But quantity-wise, this is one that I'd be looking at like 10 or less. 10 is like ideal for me. That's 2 EDH sets. So that if there is someone local that wanted it for standard or something, all right, I've got you, but I also have this EDH copy as well. And as far as timeline, that's one that I think is going to take a little bit longer. We're probably looking at a longer term, like 10 to 14-ish months on this one. And the reason I say that is because we've just plateaued right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for this to kind of see any kind of gain, it just has to dry up. We've gone past the point where content creators would really be all about it and showcasing it in decks. I think it was in 1 or 2 videos, but nothing really big. So I'm not sure outside of like natural demand and price progression how we'll get there. But I think we will in a little bit longer term window in that like 10 to 14 months.
Yeah, I think overall the timeline for me is, I think, a little longer. Sorry, I think your timeline is little longer than I believe. I think there's opportunity now before Aether Drift. And then what slows us down is the fact that we go into modern season. So all the collective brain power swaps from standard to modern.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have a set release, and then all the collective brain power has to swap over from modern to standard again.
Yeah,
and we don't
that's
really,
fair.
yeah, we don't really know how this is gonna work out. Like what is this going to look like? What is the context going to be when this kind of swap happens? So there's opportunity for this to just kind of rocket up through Aether Drift into modern season and then plateau again. Or maybe standard just kind of cools and people don't really move in anymore and it just plateaus for a little while and then it picks up after modern season. So I don't think you're wrong with your timeline. I think that's a really good way to look at it because we do have to figure out we need new patterns, new heuristics.
Yeah.
With the way rotation works now, with the way our seasonality works now, and for me, I think we come out of modern season and we just see the same decks just kind of exist because it's hard to believe that so much is going to change that like core elements of established archetypes are just going to be pushed out. So I would look at it for the next couple of months and then like maybe like 6 months after that when we come out of modern season, I could expect to make profit on both of those ends. But I think a longer term outlook on this card is absolutely fine too if you want to try and like weather the storm.
Yeah.
This is a conversation we were having in the Discord, I think last week, of just like what really happens now when we're looking at standard and modern cards because of the way seasonality works. Like
it's a new economy basically is how you have to look at it. You know, like this is how it works now. It's not an environment we've been in before. Like this is wholly alien, guys. We haven't had this rotation ever before with this seasonality, with this set design, with this saturation of products. Like this is uncharted territory. Like we're back to square one, ground zero with this. And I think that's an important thing, I think, for some people to hold on to right now.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty cool. I like the way we're working in. And if this year sets the pattern of Q1 is standard, Q2 is question mark, Q3, 4 standard as well, then we can build our heuristics out a little bit better and understand what's going on overall when we look at standard and cards for that kind of interim format, be it modern or pioneer or whatever.
Yeah.
And so overall, I think this is just a great look, especially when you're looking at all the endurings. When you're looking at the cycle, I think this is just hands down the best one to be looking at from a multi-format standpoint.
Yeah.
For me, what I am looking at this week is Maddening Cacophony from Zendikar Rising. And this is a sorcery for 1 and a blue. It says each opponent mills 8 cards. And then it has a kicker cost of 3 and a blue. If this spell was kicked instead, each opponent mills half their library rounded up. And if that sounds familiar, that's the card Traumatized.
Yeah.
And for those curious at home, Traumatized costs 3 and 2 blue instead of 4 and 2 blue. So there's a strict difference there. Now, I added this to my list of specs at the end of June of 2023. CK was buying 94 copies at $2.05. I don't have the retail numbers on that because I wasn't taking that information then, but there were 291 listings on TCG Player for a market price of $3.11. When I was taking my notes, CK was buying 61 copies at $4.30, and they had 10 copies for sale at $8.50. As of recording, they are buying 71 copies at $4.30, and they have 8 for sale at $8.50. So they basically have found their butter zone for prices, and we found people are willing to sell this card at $4.30 to CK. So they just, cool, we can just churn it, so just up the quantity because we know we're getting it in. Awesome. On TCG Player, there are 177 listings with a market price of $5.32. As of recording, there are 178 listings, and the market price is wonky on TCG Player to say the best. So we'll go with the $5.49 it says on stocks. When we look at this card in Commander, the playability is pretty clear. It goes in a mill deck. We're just here for big mills. On the whole, across the format, Maddening Cacophony, there we go, isn't quite at the sweet spot of mana per card milled, which was set by Glimpse the Unthinkable at 5 cards per colored pip, but 4 cards per pip is mighty close. And then if you're able to kick this, it's effectively your second copy of Traumatized, but instead of targeting like Traumatized does, this actually affects each opponent, which does make it strictly better for just 1 more colorless mana than Traumatized. Again, this costs 4 and 2 blue as compared to 3 and 2 blue. So for those wondering, the double mill effects like we see on Bruvac the Grandiloquent means that a kicked Maddening Cacophony or a Traumatized will mill the entire library of a player if there are an even number of cards left, or it will leave 1 card if there are an odd number of cards left, making this a rather potent combo, doubling a mill effect and Maddening Cacophony or Traumatized. Now, mill is the 14th most popular theme in Commander according to Rec. The overwhelming majority of these decks do feature blue, so Maddening Cacophony is a high synergy card for the theme, and it sees play in over 50% of the mill decks that have been submitted to Rec. Thus, I think we're okay calling this card a pillar of the theme, and we should expect mill players, new and old, to continue to move in on this card as they kind of power up their plan. Now, there also is an amount of casual appeal, i.e. kitchen table play, that continues to drive demand on this card, and it's really difficult to figure that into the sales numbers, but I do like the fact that this does kind of cross that divide a bit. Is mill a high impact theme in Commander or Constructed? No, but it does have its fans, and WotC continues to lean into the theme, which is great for mill players. The more high impact mill cards are sought after, and there aren't many cards more impactful within the theme than this. We really don't get anything as close to Glimpse the Unthinkable anymore, and 4 per pip is just a fantastic rate.
Yeah.
When it comes to the timeline on this, there were about 800 total copies left when I was taking my notes. On page 2, Tarkan's cards had 263 near mint copies at $5.53 with $2 shipping. There's another vendor that on page 2 that also has 132 copies at $7.64. No shipping. So we kind of get a really clear idea where this card is in terms of price, and that is about 300 of the 8. The Gaming Code Direct on page 3 has 40 near mint copies at $5.96 plus $5 shipping. And on page 4, Card Monster Games, who you will see at Star City events now, has 11 near mint copies at $6.60 with $5 shipping. So we see that vendors believe that this card is worth anywhere between like $8 and $10 at the moment, and based on the average of 7 sales a day, we'll see this card move from being a card worth just over $5 to $7 to something closer to 8 and 10 in a really quick order. And then we can flip these back into the TCG Player market in a little under a month, and that's honestly going to be my main look overall, because this card goes up pretty quickly when you look at market price. And while CK is buying a decent amount, I don't think that their main customer profile is interested in cards like this, seeing as their buy price on the most popular commander for this theme, i.e. Bruvac, is rather low. So we can kind of tell that their customer profile just really isn't into mill on the whole. And we also kind of get that idea that people are just happy shipping mill cards to them at a price. It doesn't really matter how good or bad it is. They found their kind of, like I said, their butter zone for this. Thus, you're best served moving these to your locals and flipping them back into TCG Player. Now, when it comes to the reprint equity on this, between the kicker keyword and the mill keyword, I believe we're kind of locked out of standard set reprints until kicker comes back. We do see it here and there in the core sets. So the next foundation set, I assume, is in 5 years. So we're just kind of locked on that. It's a hard lock. But I do fear a commander deck reprint because we could get a mill-themed deck at any point. Like, that's just a thing. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
And then, so that makes moving in a little bit of a risk, but I don't assume we're really going to have to worry too much about it overall. Stuff like this moves pretty quickly. When it comes to buy quantity, I actually don't own any of these at the moment, as I didn't open a lot of Zendikar Rising. And I really haven't started to spec on dedicated mill cards for Commander yet. I've been kind of dragging my feet because I thought, like we talked about years ago, Bruvac would come down in price, but that hasn't happened yet. But when I have the opportunity to, I'd be more than happy to hold between like 6 and 8 of these to move towards Commander players and eventually flip back into the TCG marketplace. Based on what we're seeing from individual vendors, i.e. people who aren't like the Gaming Co., if you were to just put 8 on TCG Player, you're not really going to make a lot of waves, like with some other cards that we've seen in the past. You can just kind of hide in the crowd. And so I think that's, if you just wanted to buy and flip back, I think 8's a perfectly fine number to do that. Once you cross like the 10 barrier, that's when you actually start to make waves with a card like this. And it becomes a little dicey. Sales are going to be a little slower. People are going to price to you. You can't hide as well unless you just kind of release a couple at a time, which just can be time consuming overall. But if you wanted to just flip back into TCG Player, again, 6 to 8 is where I would be.
Yeah, I think 6 to 8 on this one is good. I think the problem is, especially when you're opening it up back onto the market, and you mentioned one of the vendors there, you have the Gaming Co risk, right? Or if you just have a fat brick, I mean, everyone's going to price under you because they know theirs is never going to move. But yeah, you're right. Release it slowly back into the environment. I would say, yeah, this is very much, going back to the standard matters thing. A lot of people liked standard when you had 0 J's Mill 10 that were more casual players. This is casual players like this card. They'll always exist. They will always exist. No questions asked. They will always want to play Mill. They will always include this card in Mill, except for the 50% that didn't because they're dumb and probably haven't updated their list on EDH Rec, if we're being honest, because this is just, I can't remember the last time someone said, I want to build an EDH Mill deck and did not include this card. It's the most auto-include ever, but I think it's great. Quantity's super solid, and I'm surprised this is not worth more.
Yeah, this has been something that I've been watching, like I said, since the end of June of 2023, and the fact that it's only recently spiked, I'll bring this up again on stocks, starting in December of that year. It took another 6 months to just kind of rocket up and then hold, is pretty surprising, because we've seen a lot of reprints for Mill. We've seen a lot of targeted cards for Mill. Like, what's going on? Why haven't people moved into this card, especially when it is, per the self-reporting crowd, like the most synergistic card for blue-based Mill decks? Like, something's going on here that I don't quite understand. And maybe it's too efficient. Maybe that's the problem. But I wouldn't be surprised if over time Mill just becomes more of a palatable theme and just people pick up on this overall, because you know what? I got to end the game quickly. I got to get all 4 players out of the game. We're going to skip Traumatizing, Glimpse the Unthinkable because they target it. We're just going to play cards that affect everyone. And so, here we are. We've talked about not Dragon Throne, the one that exiles. Altar of the Brood? No.
Yeah. Alter the Brood.
Like we've talked about that. That card does nothing more but nothing but combo. When you play that card, you're just there to just
ridiculous.
Combo out on that turn and exile the libraries of everybody else in the game. And this is a card that can do this very, very, very quickly. Especially if you kick it and you fork it. Like, why not? That's you don't need Bruvac, etc. That's like 3/4 of somebody's library gone because you get the first half and then you get half of a half, right? So the math says roughly 3/4. That seems exactly fantastic. That takes 8-ish mana if you twin cast it. Or is that the blue one? The blue fork?
Yes, twin cast. That's one of them.
Yeah, right. So like that's hyper efficient for milling out the entirety of the table, and sure, why not? I expect this to just. I don't think this suffers from the Craterhoof problem.
No.
I think this might just be like the non-self-reporting people just don't know about this card yet, or the people that aren't like finally tuning their mill decks aren't going back to see what's out there. And like I said, when they go back and they do, new and old mill players alike will look at this card and say like, oh, if the other 50% of people are playing this, maybe I should invest in this too.
Yeah.
Like, and then there we are. We're just blowing it out the water. So, anything else for this week?
Nope, that's it.
All right. So for our first actually recorded episode in 2025, we are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And if you need to get in touch with us individually, I am at Halt, I am Reptar. You are
at Damon_Thurston.
And we'll see you next week.